The US Navy is fielding a veritable army of what I can really only describe as autonomous drone swarm speedboats, capable of traversing the open ocean at highway speeds while offering enough range to escort carrier strike groups and enough payload to sink enemy warships. These 4,800-pound vessels can stay at sea for days or even weeks at a time, deploying drones, collecting intelligence, even locating and identifying enemy mines. And when the time comes for them to return to their port or their launching vessel, they can be refueled with good old-fashioned diesel and sent right back out into the fight. While these drone boats can be operated via remote control, they're also capable of operating fully autonomously, coordinating with the rest of the swarm to identify and distribute targets as they scream across the wave tops at around 50 miles per hour. The Navy calls these drone swarm speedboats GARC, or Global Autonomous Reconnaissance Craft, and let's be frank, that is a pretty awkward name for a very scary new capability. But if you ask me, what's really special about these autonomous warfighters is that I'm not talking about an emerging technology in the earliest stages of testing, or a proposed platform some contractor says they could build if they receive enough funding. No, these GARC drone boats have already seen more than 5,000 hours of operational testing on the open ocean. And as of right now, they're not only already in production, but their manufacturer, Black Sea Technologies, is pumping them out at a rate of around 30 per month, and production is still spinning up. So let's talk about the US Navy's new GARC drone boats and why they might represent the biggest bang for the Navy's buck that we've seen surface in decades. And maybe more importantly, why this is all just a glimpse of much bigger things to come. I'm Alex Hollings. Welcome to Sea Power. Ukraine has successfully taken down not one, but two Russian Su-30 fighters using American-sourced AIM-9M Sidewinder missiles launched from naval drones operating on the surface of the Black Sea, marking a significant first and second for maritime drones. And I've been staying on top of this story with Ground News. Ground News is an aggregator that collects articles published by news outlets all around the world, and then places them all into a single easy-to-read feed that helps me not just stay on top of what's going on, but to see right through most common forms of media bias. Right here on Ground News, I see that 64 outlets have already covered this story, including 12 left-leaning and 11 right-leaning ones. Right-leaning outlets put a bit more emphasis on how embarrassing this development is for Russia, with headlines like, "Russia reeling as 38 million-pound fighter jet shot down by Ukraine's sea drone in world first." Whereas left-leaning outlets placed more emphasis on the historical significance of this intercept, with headlines like, "Ukraine set it down fighter jets with drone boats for the first time in history." And Ground News also shows you vital information about each outlet along with the headlines, like their political bias, factuality rating, corporate ownership, government affiliations, and more. And I love the Ground News blind spot feature that shows me stories that are getting lots of attention in one political sphere and not in the other. It helps me make sure I'm keeping my media intake balanced. Ground News is a big part of my research and my day-to-day news consumption, and it can be for you too. Just go to ground.news/sandboxx with 2 X's, or follow that link in the description below, and you'll get 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use every day. Again, that's ground.news/sandboxx to get 40% off their Vantage plan that'll help you stay on top of things. In February of 2024, Ukraine made history when a swarm of at least 10 explosive-laden Modular 5 drone boats attacked and sank a 550-ton Russian Navy missile corvette, the Ivanovets, just off of Ukraine's Black Sea coast. Now, Russia's loss of the Ivanovets marked the first time a crewed Navy ship had ever been lost to a drone boat attack, but it would not be the last. Just 2 weeks later, Ukraine would do it again. but this time on a much larger scale, using those same Magura 5 weaponized drone boats to sink the 4,000-ton amphibious landing ship Caesar Kunikov near Russian-occupied Crimea. And just over 2 weeks after that, Ukraine did it again, using the same drone boats, this time to sink a 1,500-ton patrol ship, Russia's Sergei Kotov. Then, in January of this year, Ukraine made its way into the warfare history books again, this time reportedly shooting down a Russian Mi-8 helicopter from those same Magura 5 drone boats, now armed with Soviet-era infrared-guided air-to-air missiles modified for surface-to-air duty, known to Ukraine as the R-73 Sea Dragon. But Ukraine's drone boats arguably didn't get the widespread attention they deserve until earlier this month, when Ukraine's larger and more advanced Magura 7s shocked the world by downing not one, but two Russian Su-30 flankers. I'm talking two super maneuverable multi-role fighters shot down by drone boats in less than a week, using American-sourced AIM-9M Sidewinder missiles, again, modified for surface-to-air duty. Now, this marked yet another historical first for the embattled nation of Ukraine, but in a broader scope, the loss of these $50 to $60 million fighter jets, two relatively inexpensive drone boats packing second-hand short-range air-to-air missiles, could be viewed as the tipping point between the drone-supported combat operations of the late 20th century and the drone-centered combat operations of the 21st. And while the US Navy's large surface combatant warships can deliver more combat power to far-flung coasts than many entire nations could muster, the Navy has no intention of relying on gross tonnage alone to fight and win in this drone-centric 21st century. Instead, they're taking a page right out of Ukraine's book and fielding their own fleet of autonomous speedboat war machines, and they call them GARCs. Now, GARC, one more time, stands for Global Autonomous Reconnaissance Craft, and to some extent you really could think of these as the US Navy's version of the drone boats Ukraine's been using to wreak havoc on Russia's Black Sea Fleet and more. Though, in the case of the US Navy, they're being designed to fill a wide variety of roles, both at home and abroad. Really, just about anywhere the Navy could use a set of eyes, ears, or maybe a kinetic payload or two. Now, these autonomous speedboats are about 16 feet long with a 5-foot 8-inch beam. Each one can carry a payload of up to 1,000 pounds while cruising at around 22 knots, or around 25 miles per hour, or sprinting at up to 44 knots, which is a bit better than 50 miles per hour. And with 163 gallons of diesel fuel on board, each of these drone boats can cover more than 800 miles in a hurry, or more than 1,800 at a leisurely pace. These vessels are rated to operate in the open ocean at a sea state of 5, which is no joke. We're talking waves ranging from 8 to 13 feet high, where most civilian boats wouldn't dare go, and where even Coast Guard cutters, built for stormy seas, might get a bit uncomfortable. In fact, according to GARC's manufacturer, Black Sea Technologies, these boats withstood even larger 15-foot waves, or a sea state of 6, during the 5,000 hours of operational testing that they've already undergone with the US Navy. Now, not to belabor this point, but when it comes to small boats and small vessels, that is a pretty big deal. It's not clear exactly what sea state limitations America's larger in-service Arleigh Burke-class destroyers may have, but their predecessors, the Spruance class that retired in around 2005, were reportedly only operational 80% of the time while sailing through the rough chop of a sea state 5, and that readiness dropped to just 20% in a sea state of 6. Managing these rough seas more effectively was one of the reasons the Arleigh Burke class emerged with a larger and then much larger displacement than its Spruance class precursors. And the difficulty that small boats have in rough waters is, in fact, One of the most common criticisms analysts levy at the US Navy's plans to, as former Defense Secretary Mark Esper once put it, field more, smaller surface combatants and place a greater reliance on lightly and potentially optionally manned vessels. And one 1982 US Navy study determined that the probability of a Sea State 5 or worse in the open oceans of the Northern Hemisphere sits at around 50% at any given time, meaning that drone boats or even larger ships that can't operate in that rough a chop could be very limited in what they could be tasked with in open waters. But as the Navy's already demonstrated, these Toyota Corolla-sized GAR speedboats can traverse waters that destroyers with more than 3,000 times the displacement might struggle with. Now, these boats are designed to carry modular payloads of up to 1,000 pounds, which includes intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance equipment, sensors to locate mines or enemy submarines, smaller drones, and of course, good old-fashioned kinetic or high-explosive weapon systems. While certainly not massive, that is enough to arm each GARC with a Mark 54 anti-submarine torpedo and a few hundred pounds worth of detection and targeting equipment. Or maybe a whole bevy of Anduril's new Copperhead 100M drone torpedoes. You could use flying electronic warfare drones like the Pulsar L, anti-ship weapons like the Naval Strike Missile, or any number of other weapons or systems that fit the form factor. And as we've seen out of Ukraine, these vessels could even be armed with modified AIM-9M sidewinders for surface-to-air duties, though Ukraine's been doing so with dated AIM-9Ms, and the US could instead turn to the much more advanced thrust vectoring and longer-legged AIM-9X, which would add high off-bore sight targeting, alleviating the need to orient the boat at your airborne target on top of that improved range. But I want to be clear that at least thus far, there have been no public statements suggesting the US Navy is aiming to arm their GARCs with Sidewinder missiles. Now, the GARC's control system allows for fully autonomous or direct remote control, while these boats stay at sea for days or even weeks on end. But if you ask me, what really makes these maritime drones special is how well they lend themselves to swarm operations. Now, these drones are designed with a low profile and small radar return, and when operated autonomously, they use collaborative decision-making within the swarm to identify and distribute targets. And their speed and endurance means they could be deployed for defense alongside a carrier strike group before threats present themselves, or they could be used for open ocean interdiction, coastal defense, and a whole lot more. Thanks to their low profile and 1,800 miles worth of range, these boats could serve as attritable forward scouts, identifying enemy ships or other targets to be engaged by standoff weapons launched by aircraft, like the immensely capable AGM-158C long-range anti-ship missile. But for swarming duties around a carrier, or anywhere else for that matter, you need to have enough drones to go around. And that might be where the GARC really shines. The first 24 GARC boats cost the US Navy just under $160 million, which shakes out to around $6.5 million apiece, or around the price of 2 of those single-use long-range anti-ship missiles. But costs will come down as production increases and testing is completed, meaning these reusable drone boats are likely to only get cheaper as time goes on. Now, Black Sea Technologies is currently building these boats at a pace of around 1 a day, and it's only getting quicker. At peak production, the Navy wants to buy 32 of these drone boats per month, with aims to field a fleet that's likely in the 300 to 500 vessel range by the end of 2026. Now, in May of last year, the US Navy stood up Unmanned Surface Vessel Squadron 3, the Hellhounds, at Naval Base Coronado to operate and evaluate these GARCs for integration into the Navy's surface fleet, using those first 8 GARCs as testbed vehicles, with GARC missions already taking place in San Diego Bay and elsewhere across the California coast. But in the long term, these GARCs are really just the beginning, with the US Navy actively developing, fielding, and testing a long list of maritime drone systems, including Northrop Grumman's wild-looking Manta Ray, Anduril's Ghost Shark, General Dynamics' Medusa expendable mine delivery drone, and the Lionfish UUV, among a long list of others. Which all just goes to show that people like me that aren't particularly comfortable in open water will only get more nervous as time goes on. And with that ends yet another edition of Sea Power from Sandboxx News. I'm Alex Hollings. Make sure to swing by sandboxnews.com today and every day for all the latest in news, entertainment, and motivation from all around the force. If you got anything out of today's video, make sure to click like and subscribe down below, and leave me a comment so I know what I should cover next. And of course, don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandboxx News.